Pippin.
Hey everybody, welcome back to video game Esoterica and our continuing series on the Apple Bandai Pippin. And today we're taking a look at Racing Days, released in 1996 for both the Pippin and the Macintosh computer. It's probably the most graphically impressive game on the console because it is pushing polygons around in real time, although it's doing it in software and not with a GPU. But is it a good game? No, not really. It's not the worst driving game I've ever played, but it's definitely nothing accomplished. I'd much rather play the original Need for Speed any day of the week over Racing Days, but as far as what the Pippin was capable of and what games it had available, it's definitely one that you do want to talk about. The music is decent. It's kind of like jaunty little tune, and you'll see here as we're driving around, it does run it decently well. The frame rate is good, especially because there is no GPU. It's just running off the PowerPC 603. The handling is a little touchy, and you'll see I go right into the wall there. But the game doesn't actually play like a racing game. The car doesn't really have any sort of physics or mechanics that make it feel like you're actually driving. It kind of just turns in increments, and it really feels like, I don't know, more of a first-person shooter engine that they decided to put a racing game into. But the draw distance isn't bad. I mean, you're seeing all these different polygons, all these buildings and the billboards moving around, and it's showing that the Pippin was capable of pushing polygons around even if it didn't have, a dedicated GPU to it. Some of the textures are odd, like when you're in the tunnel, it doesn't really have any feeling of forward momentum. It feels like you're just stationary. And I think that's my biggest issue with the game is that it really doesn't feel like it's moving that fast ever, and it doesn't give you that sense of speed and forward movement that you're looking for in a racing game. So that's a little bit disappointing, but I think it was more of a graphical showcase for the Macintosh of what these developers could do. Clearly they weren't great at making driving games, but as far as pushing around a lot of polygons on a CPU and making it all run relatively fast, it definitely is an accomplishment. Now the unfortunate part of the game is it only comes with 3 tracks, so even if it was a great game, you're still not going to get much longevity out of it, and it is a mediocre at best game, which means you're going to pop it in once, experience it, and probably never come back to it, because honestly, I'm not going to come back to this game. It was fun to look at, and I definitely want to talk about it from a historical standpoint and show it to you guys, but it is definitely very low on my list of racing games. There's a lot of other things I'd rather play than Racing Days, so definitely it's fun to look at, it's fun to play as far as checking it out is concerned, but it's definitely nothing that I would recommend anybody go out and buy and check out. I mean, if you have a Pippin and you want to burn a CDR, that's going to cost you like 10 cents for that disc. Definitely do that. It might be fun to you guys. But definitely, I mean, unless you're going for a full set, I would not recommend you buy this. And this is it's one of those games that's lauded as showing what the Pippin's capable of. And for that respect, I definitely do give it credit, because it's not PlayStation 1 or Saturn levels, but it does show that the system was at least capable of holding its own in some way, because it does look not terrible, and that's kind of for the Pippin, the best you're really going to get. And now we're moving on to the Cherry Hill track, and all the tracks, they don't really have much of a flow to them, and I find the game to be pretty difficult even on easy. The cars get in your way. I mean, you can definitely pass them, and it becomes a little bit easier, but you can see here I've turned up the speed of the vehicle, and even then, trying to make those turns is just really difficult, and braking doesn't really seem to help that much. It seems that the car at a certain point in time just cannot turn any harder, and unless you really slow down and let the cars pass you and end up back in 8th place, you're really not going to be able to make those turns. As you can see here in the tunnel again, like I said, things don't move that well, and I wish that the developers and the designers had used a little bit more, work in that texture just to kind of show movement, because it is so static, you really just can't tell what's going on. And that's Racing Days. I mean, it's fun to look at, it's fun to check out, it's an experience for sure. It's a rare game on a rare console, and those are always fun to kind of play around with, but it is definitely not a very good racing game whatsoever. What I'll let you do is watch the rest of this track, and I'll come back and talk more about the game and kind of close the video out, but the music's decent, it's catchy, I kind of like that, so enjoy it, and I'll be back in a second. And hey, at least we managed to come in 6th this time. We weren't in last place again. I have never won a race in this game. Granted, I did not play it that long, but I don't ever see myself being able to win a race, and honestly, I don't really care that much about winning a race. Maybe you get a checkered flag or something fun happens, but I'm definitely never going to put the time into racing days to be able to find out exactly what does happen. And I will say that as far as all the games I played for the Pippin, and I played pretty much all of them, this one was the biggest disappointment to me because this one's always mentioned as far as, you know, some of the best Pippin games are concerned. And I think that comes down to the fact that graphically, it is probably the most impressive thing you're going to see on the system. And I think sometimes, you know, when you read these articles, graphical fidelity is conflated with a good game. It's definitely the most impressive game, and you can see now that that car's up to a good speed. It definitely moves quickly, and it's fun to look at, but it's just not fun to play. And I don't think I'm ever going to play this game again. Even though it was fun to check out, it was fun to talk about, I can't foresee ever popping this back in the Pippin and playing it. Where some of the other games that I put in that really are never talked about, I do want to go back and check those out. Shortly you're going to be seeing Gundam Tactics, a game that's always shown for the Pippin but never really talked about, and that game was actually quite intriguing, and I want to continue to play that and progress in it and see where it goes. And for racing days, I just, not only do I not want to get better at it, there's only 3 tracks, so there's nothing even to come back to. Now granted, there is a car designer and you can change the livery on your car, but that doesn't change the gameplay whatsoever, and that I think is what needs the most work for the game, because it just doesn't really feel fun to play, and that's the cardinal sin for a game, is it doesn't need to look amazing, but it needs to be fun. And I think the developers of this were really using it as a technical showcase to make it look good, but they kind of forgot to actually incorporate any of the fun mechanics that racing games have that make you actually want to play them. And that's a disappointment, but I knew going in to the Pippin that there was going to be some disappointments. It's not a console known for a quality library, and of course I subjected myself to checking it out, and that's kind of my fault. It's still a fun system, and I'm definitely going to keep it in my collection and play some games for it. But I knew going in that I wasn't going to be finding hidden gems that no one had ever talked about before. And that's just kind of part and parcel of talking about these rare systems. A lot of times they're rare because they didn't do very well and didn't sell many copies, and that's not because they had a spectacular library and no one was interested. It's usually because for some reason or another there was a deficiency that made it not popular and not really widely adopted. And you can see there, I just cannot pass that car no matter what I do. They always seem to just get right in front of you, bump you around, and just screw with you. Now you can switch over to trackball control, and that is basically a drunk driving simulator because it is absolutely impossible to control this game with a trackball. Maybe with a mouse it would be easier, but I really don't think so. I don't know why the developers spent any time giving you these alternate control methods, because I can barely make the first turn in the game. It's pretty fun to watch, and it's kind of hilarious to check out, but it's pointless to try. Short of that, thanks so much for watching. This has been Racing Days. I'm never going to play it again. If you could do us a huge favor, go down below and hit like, subscribe. It takes us a lot of time to make each and every one of these episodes. We'll be back with more Pippin content next week, and we'll have videos on Tuesday and Sunday as well. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.